Everybody, how are you? I'm hopping on today because something has been in my energy field probably for the last, the last month or so. And I've kind of been processing, often when things come and happen to me, and then I process them, and then I start to look at patterns out in the world. And I do that in lots of really interesting ways. And then I kind of go, oh, that's what it is, and that's how it impacts us. So I just wanted to share this because some people might actually find it very helpful. And it can often be really helpful, especially when we are feeling a bit lost and confused or misunderstood. And especially as we're shifting from this very power over dominating kind of system into something that's a bit more egalitarian, which is more power with. And that can be a bit of a struggle. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you how I've been doing some research. But what I find often, as somebody who has done a lot of braving in my life, I've done a lot of really brave things. I've taken a lot of risks. As a result of that, when you take risks and when you do things that are like different to other people and you're not fitting in, you're just kind of going, well, this feels right for me, and so I'm going off to do it. What you do is you start to have a belief about who you are, and you feel really centered. You learn things about yourself during adversity and struggles and risks and all the rest of it. You kind of go, oh my God, I'm so much braver, and oh, I'm a really good communicator, or I do well in these situations. You'd never know about yourself if you just stayed in your tiny little small world. Okay, so when you kind of brave out, you often start to really get an understanding of who you are, and what you find is that and I talk about this a lot in my work, that you are so much more than the role that often people can project onto you, whether that's, for me, the wife, the daughter, the sister, the mother, the friend, the work colleague, the study partner, the listening partner, all the various different things that I do. You can get over-identified with a role, and when somebody starts to, question you or victimize you, you can really lose traction. It can really rocks your center. And I'll give you an example. An example is when you're sharing your truth about something to somebody, and they use what you've shared to weaponize your truth. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. They weaponize your truth against you in order to victimize you and keep you small and keep you contained and in your place. And it's especially for women, just keep small, don't be too loud, don't rock the boat, just you fit into your little slot. And the more brave you are, and the more you've kind of, overcome adversity, the more kind of resilient and powerful you become, because you just don't believe all those stories that people kind of can make up about you, or society can make up about you, that you have to believe in order to keep you being in that sort of power over, situation where you are the victim and somebody else is the rescuer or the perpetrator, in that Cartman drama triangle. And I was doing a bit of research on this, and let me tell you, I have found great resources. I always find great resources, but I found this brilliant resource in The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and Real Housewives of New York, both of which are on Netflix. And I love the New York one because I lived in New York City for 5 years, so I can really relate to the whole culture. It's very easy for me to kind of understand. And the LA one the same, I guess, similar, because I spent some time over in the West Coast because my husband used to work over there quite a bit. So I've got kind of a bit of an understanding of both of those cultures. And what often happens in these situations is there'll be a fallout, and what the group tends to do, and it happens in families as well, and I know this from my work in Metamorphic Technique, is that the group of women in Real Housewives of New York, let's say, will try and project their shadow aspects, their what they would consider weaker parts of who they are, onto somebody else, their victim, onto somebody else. And so I'm constantly listening to these conversations where women are going, I'm really concerned about you. You've got, you seem to be not doing so well at the moment. And we're all really concerned about you. And, you're just like victimizing somebody who's had a bit of a moment where they've drunk too much, and they've had an argument with somebody and they're just a bit tired and emotional. And there's a television camera crew following them around, and they victimize each other. And it's really, really, really interesting, because what I've also observed is that people who often do that have not done a lot of integration of their own shadow. So let me just explain. We all come into the world, I believe, kind of whole. Well, in metamorphic, okay, maybe let me tell you, let's go back. In metamorphic technique, at the point of conception, we are whole, okay? And then when we are in our mother's wombs, okay, we start to take on patterns depending on how she behaves and what's going on in the environment, okay? And that then gets, well, it gets placed down on your spinal reflexes. In metamorphic technique, that's the areas that we work on to kind of, loosen them up and help to shift them. But you find these patterns are kind of placed within our energy field. So, our mother's, has had a struggle with a family member, or, she's got issues around speaking up for herself. You're going to take all of that into your system. So by the time you are born, you've already got quite a lot of emotional labor going on. Okay, you're already coming out going, oh, here we go. I've got all this going on too. And then you come out into a world where, depending on who you are and how you look and how you behave and how you speak and how well you're educated, immediately starts putting you in these classification processes. And what often happens is, in the majority of the world, apart from, I think, a lot of indigenous cultures which revere and honor all those idiosyncrasies that we find within ourselves, and they go, oh, that means that you're really like the Maoris will watch their children go, oh, that person's going to be brilliant at woodwork, and oh, that person over there is very good at strategic thinking, we'll use them, they'll be great at this. And so they start to watch and observe their young people. But we in the Western world live in a society where we're all being funneled into a tiny education system that observes a very small percentage of us, okay? Of us, I mean us, not us, everybody, that as well. But, and so what happens is you start to realize that that part of you that's maybe very vocal and very strong and very outgoing might not be honored and recognized, especially if you're a woman, or an Arab woman, let's say, or whatever. So that part of you that's really strong and very outspoken will be asked to leave the building. Would you mind? Unless you're in an environment which really celebrates that, that's going to be split off from you. Okay, so you're going to push that part of you away. All right, and that happens with all other things, the part of you that might, love, I don't know, singing songs, and, all of a sudden, somebody comes along and goes, oh my God, you've got such an awful voice. Oh, I'm going to shut that down too. Gets pushed away. Okay. The part of you that might be get really angry about things. Oh, we don't like anger. Push that away. So all these parts of you get pushed away. Okay. And when they get pushed away, it makes what I kind of see is it creates space in your energy field for kind of like the dominant paradigm to fill in all those blank spaces that suddenly appear, you know, in your wholeness. Okay, so let's just say 50% of you gets shunted. So in order to kind of fill up your sense of self, all this other stuff comes in to kind of fill you up. It's not yours. It's cultural. It's, you know, it's from, you know, it's family. It's just all sorts of stuff comes in, and you become this sort of mouthpiece for the dominant paradigm, really, ultimately. And then when you start doing some work, some integration work, what happens is you start those messages that, you know, you kind of go, oh, hang on, what do you mean I need to go to the doctor to ask their opinion on whether or not I should take something? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't ask advice from a medical professional, but ultimately it's up to you whether or not you decide to do what that medical professional says. It's up to you to decide. Okay, they can go, yeah, well, I would take, you know, maybe you can take these, you know, antibiotics. You might go, you know what, maybe not. I might not. I might hold off on that, and what I might do is something else instead. Okay, I might do a bit of research. Thanks for letting me know what you can do for me. Okay, that's an empowered position. That's when you're in a position of belonging to yourself, going, well, I know who I am, and so I'm going to start advocating for myself. And no, you can't come in. And it's my dog. Start speaking up for yourself. Okay, am I making sense so far? Okay, so you start to integrate back into yourself. Like, let's just say it was the angry, talkative part of you that got told to stop talking so much and stop being so angry and demanding. That part of you gets integrated back in, because you start to go, oh, actually, it's quite useful to have that, especially when there's somebody in a bit of an authority position telling me what I should be doing, or something happens and I suddenly have to speak up for myself and advocate for myself, you know, and somebody's, you know, misdiagnosing me or sending me away again, or I'm using the medical profession. I don't just want to use it, but the education system, you know, with your child, and you're like, hang on a second, I need to stand up for my child here. So you start to bring all those parts of you back in, because you're questioning the dominant paradigm. You're going, well, I shouldn't speak up for my child who's being bullied at school. I shouldn't go and speak to the, you know, I should just put up with it and tell my kid to suck it up. And you go, that doesn't feel right. I actually want to support my kid. So I am going to support them at home, and I'm also going to go into the school and I'm going to have a word with them. So I need that part of me that speaks up and advocates for myself and my children. Okay, so therefore that part's come back in, and another part that's told me, no, just be quiet, don't cause any trouble, has left the building. Okay, and so the more you fill all those spaces that have been filled by society and, you know, telling you what to do and how to behave, the more you kind of reclaim parts of you that you've been told to push away because they're just not quite right, just play a little bit small. You become more powerful and you become much stronger. And today I was listening to a podcast. A dear friend of mine who I've known for very many years was on a podcast, and she said, oh, have a listen to it. So I went and had a listen to it. And it's all about being a brave girl. That's what I think the podcast is called, Brave Girl. And she was talking about her life and her having 3 children and her husband dying very suddenly, and suddenly, you know, raising children on her own, and having been, you know, this, you know, always being a very kind of, you know, strong, you know, businesswoman. And then she went back to study. Suddenly, you know, the home was empty because her husband, who was normally quite a homebody, wasn't there. And so she had to foster and nurture that part of her that, you know, hadn't been used to being at home, and actually integrating that back into her. So that then fostered, I think, you know, a really generous and loving voice. And suddenly she met somebody else, and, you know, has now joined forces with them and created this incredible business. And it was so exciting celebrating and listening to somebody's story of how they've overcome adversity. Okay. And, you know, every time they got knocked down, instead of kind of believing the cultural narrative, which is, oh, poor you, yeah, maybe don't do that again. Maybe you need to stay inside, you know, and sit by the fire and eat biscuits instead, watch daytime TV. Instead, she was like out in the world braving, just one step at a time, little step at a time. And when she needed to rest, she rested, and then she would get back out again. And I do feel that, you know, the cultural narrative, particularly for women, has been for us to be small, and that we're broken. If we cry, there's something that we're broken, or we're, you know, we need fixing, and, you know, there's something wrong with us. If we're emotional or we're angry, we're just told all the time, you know, oh, we're a bit worried about you because you seem to be a bit angry. It's like, fuck off. Okay, it's enough. It's enough. Stop victimizing me, because you have not integrated your bits that stand up for you. So therefore, you need me to be small in order for you to feel okay. You need to victimize me because you're still a bit of a victim. Okay, it's that victim mentality where we can get stuck in woundology, as Caroline Myss calls it, where we just get stuck in that, oh, I'm never going to amount to much, or I'm always going to be sick, or, oh, you know, listen, I could still be in bed, but I'm not, because I kept pushing myself, and I kept going, I'm not broken, I'm not a victim. And let me tell you, there were a lot of people that were telling me I was broken, and, you know, what was wrong with me, and I needed to sort myself out, and all the rest of it. It's just like, fuck off. You don't know me. You have no idea who I am. You have no idea how resilient I am. You have no idea how powerful I am. How dare you put that teeny tiny little version of me as an overlay on top of me? How dare you? I'm not fitting into that t-shirt saying I'm a victim and I just need to stay a bit small. So you can impact, you can power over me, so you can dominate me. Don't do it. So listen, going back to metamorphic technique, we have these patterns that are in our energy field. And there is a way through metamorphic technique where you work on the feet to just sort of untangle them. And it's a very powerful thing. But I do also think that just any kind of form of nervous system recalibration, just allowing it to calm down so it can just reset. Because, you know, when we get hit all the time, I mean, I know as a mother, I do feel that your nervous system, after you have been mothering, is shot. You know, it's exhausting, because you feel so responsible for these wee kids. And I took on my role as mother very, very seriously. And I just, did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? I don't think I did. I just did the best I could. Okay, I did the best I could. But I do feel that as a mum, you can, I don't know what, I've lost my train of thought. I've completely lost my train of thought. I can't remember what I was talking about. I was talking about children and your nervous system. Okay, so your nervous system, my nervous system is so frazzled, so that I can still feel in my nervous system. Sometimes it's just this from when, you know, you'll be sitting here, Mum, can you come quickly? Or Mum, can you do this? Or Mum, can you help me here? Or, you know, it's just like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so many of us in Western culture, you know, tend to be in isolation, raising our children. You know, we don't always have extended family members around, and even if we do, they might not be the right people. They might have very different ideas about how to raise your children. And so, you know, it's about just doing the best you can. And when you suddenly have a breather, you go, let me regulate my nervous system. Let me calm down. Let me calm down. Let me calm down. I've got my son who's doing an HSC this year, and, you know, it's quite stressful. And so today I just did a nice little treatment on him, just to calm his nervous system down. He said, God, Mum, I feel so relaxed. I feel so relaxed. As men, you know, suck it up, go out, play soccer, you know, do whatever, go and do some activity. That nurturing, you know, hand on skin. So important. So in a world, we need to remind ourselves, we need to become trauma resilient. I always remember watching, and I can't remember who it was, but I think it was a trans woman, and an African-American trans woman, saying we need to become trauma resilient. And we do. We need to become shame resilient, trauma resilient, patriarchal resilient, all the things, because it just feels like, you know, there's a lot of noise out there from the people that have not been able to do the integration, who are not able to really take ownership of all their stuff, that are still these mouthpieces for a very dysfunctional system. And I feel like that system is hell-bent on keeping us small, which is probably why, you know, books like Glennon Doyle's, you know, Untamed have been so phenomenally successful, because there's just so many women that are waking up and going, I don't want to be that little woman that doesn't talk about my story or share my life, you know, experience. I want to start talking about it. I want to start sharing it. I want to start speaking about what I struggle about, not so somebody can weaponize that against me, but so that other people know that it's normal. It's normal. We all struggle. We all have shit that hits the fan. And it doesn't have to define us. It can strengthen us. It can strengthen us. It makes us so strong. Anyway, I'm going to pick a card just before I finish my ramblings. I know, who would have said, who would have thought I would come up with, got my research from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Real Housewives of New York City. Well, I tell you, if you want to have a 101 on boundary setting and conversations you should walk away from, and how not to sell yourself out so you have to participate in dysfunctional, you know, recreating a dysfunctional family for TV entertainment. But I'm very grateful that they're there, because I tell you what, it's like, it's gold. It's gold. Okay, I've got a card. Oh, I forgot that one, the village. This card is walking away from the village. It really is the wilderness. It's the braving the wilderness, as Brené Brown calls it. This is the card about finding our own belonging. Okay, and I did draw a diagram the other day, and I'll draw it very quickly here. Let me just find a piece of paper. This is the process. Oh, I hope it doesn't look too rude, but listen. Can you see that? This is the collective space, collective, all the stories, all the cultural programming and thoughts and all the rest of it, all the rubbish, all the shame, the blame, all of that, all the project, all of the stuff, all the merging, all happens here. Okay, all happens here. It's all about fitting in, and then with no boundaries, and then you take on everybody else's stuff, and you're just permanently in this trauma vortex. Okay. And then when you actually start doing your healing work, there's this period where you're kind of in this wilderness where you just like, I have to have boundaries here to not let in all of this stuff. So you have to walk away from this stuff. And then you've got to create these really strong boundaries. So you begin to get a sense of who you are. Okay. So you start saying no to things. You go, oh, how do I feel when I say no to things? And oh, what do I enjoy? And, you know, what makes me happy and more joyful? Okay. Because this cesspit here, this is just a railroad to bitterness and resentment and frustration, okay? And projecting all your stuff on everybody else. That's what that is there. And then when you're brave enough to kind of go into this place, which is kind of like Boundaryville, the wilderness, you kind of start to find out who you are. And then as you start to find out who you are and start to share a bit more about who you are, you suddenly move into this beautiful collective space where you start to feel like you're bigger. You've got you're kind of in your purpose space here. This is where you start to really thrive. You really end up finding your passion, doing all the things that you absolutely love. And it's very kind of soul-centric. This is egocentric, very soul-centric, okay? And you also start to attract in people that are helping you on your little soul-centric your soul-centric mission, okay? People start to appear, all these lovely people start to surround you. They're all celebrating you. You're celebrating you because you respect yourself. You know who you are. You know that you're bigger than all of these little bloody entities and, you know, roles that you kind of play in that cultural playground there. And listen, it doesn't mean that you can't go there. No, Colbin, you can't come in. Boundary set with the dog. Doesn't mean that you can't come back in here and, you know, have to we all have to kind of, you know, communicate and, you know, deal with the system to some degree and people who are part of it. But I do feel like up here we're creating a new system. I feel like everybody's walking away and going through this sort of initiatory process. We're kind of, and this is where, you know, people go, oh, look at you, you know, we're worried about you, we're a bit concerned. Yes, because I'm walking away. I'm walking away from all of this kit, all of this bullshit here. And I'm walking away and I'm being really brave. And I suddenly find myself in this new space. And when we're in this space, this is the space where I believe we're creating new systems, new heart-centered businesses, soul-centric businesses that are less about all of that greed and coercion and manipulation and domination and corruption and nastiness that goes on down there. But you've got to do this. You've got to walk the plank. You've got to cross that little bridge. You've got to do it if that's what you want. If you want all of this joy and abundance and fun and all the rest of it, doesn't mean you're still not going to have bumps in the road. Of course you do. But at least you know who you are, you know? At least you know who you are. So you're not in that whole blame shame game and that victim game. You kind of go, I know who I am. I know I'm going to get through this. And I know that I've got people around me now who see me and who support me being myself, being more of me. So I hope that little diagram works. Anyway, the village. I feel like we're in this really initiation, because I can't really say more words, but this initiation phase of our life. Okay, I'm seeing it all over the place where people are just being, put your hand up, leave everything that feels secure and take a few risks and find, and here's the thing, you don't always, this is not a physical move. I did a physical move. I left from, you know, the UK and came over to Australia because that's the sort of person I am. But it doesn't always have to be like that. It might be that you leave an office environment. You might leave, you know, start putting a few boundaries in with a family member who, you know, maybe's got a few addiction issues or needs to be is very competitive or very judgmental. You might just start seeing a bit less of them and start filling yourself up with more things that you like to do. I always like to think, you know, the path to wellness is a bit like, I always remember listening to somebody who said, you know, when you want to eat better, don't start denying yourself all of the stuff that you consider, you know, maybe not the most healthy. Just start adding more good stuff in. Start adding more nuts and seeds. Start adding some, you know, occasional green juices, and your body will start to feel better. Okay, and then, you know, the better you feel, the more you kind of will do that. Okay, and it's the same with everything in life. You know, start to add in more things that you enjoy to do, and you're going to start to go, oh, actually, I don't want to hang out with those people because I really enjoy doing this now. I like hanging out with my painting people, or the people that I go and do my crocheting class with, or, you know, this new course that I've started doing. I've met all these people that, you know, just all of that. It's just starting to add more stuff in that really fills you up. And I'm going to talk more about metamorphic technique and how that dynamic shifts. It kind of shifts through a family and then it just leaves. Okay, so you don't have it in your family anymore. But it can be, you know, these family situations, dysfunctional family situations, can appear in work, can appear in family peer groups and all the rest of it. They live there until the whole family does the work and clears it out. Yeah, it's very interesting. Look up Metamorphic Technique. I studied it with Gaston Saint-Pierre, who sadly passed, but what a gem of a man he was. And I learned so much for him. And I always remember, somebody making a really rude comment, because it was just a couple of, you know, it was like a couple of weekends that I did with it. But here's the thing. One Aboriginal elder once said to me, you know, it's the simple stuff that often really works. When you overcomplicate things, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. So I suppose this card and what I'm trying to say is, you know, watch how you allow the words of others to define who you are. Just watch that. The words of others, not necessarily even just people, you know, friends or family talking around you, but the words of others in the news, in what you're reading and all the rest of it. Go, is that who I am? Is that right? Just enable your critical thinker and go, yeah, does that ring true for me? The work of Byron Katie, every time. Sometimes doesn't always do it for me, but most of the time I get a good result out of that, just when working with really kind of gnarly thoughts that can just twist things. And always remember, if you're feeling a bit lost and confused, it's because you're swirling around in here in this sort of trauma vortex. And the more you kind of brave the wilderness, stand on your own, and it sometimes means, you know, sitting on your own in the school canteen, sitting on your own in the university canteen, you know, not going out or, you know, seeing friends or feeling like you're part of something, until you get very clear on who you are. And then when you go out in these situations, what other people say just doesn't even bother you. It's just completely irrelevant, because you know you have a much stronger sense of self. You've got good boundaries with, you know, all the shame stuff that kind of, you know, can kick off, the shame gremlins, as Brené Brown calls them. And then you start to swirl about in this area. Oh, and what a joyous place that is, let me tell you. But leave the village. You've got to leave those power over dynamics where people need you need to be asking other people what you should do. It's completely different, you know, when you're asking somebody for guidance. You know, what's coming up here? You know, very recently I did a card reading for a friend, and there were a few bits, and I said, well, it could mean this and it could mean that and maybe that, and she was going, well, maybe I don't do that. And I was like, well, maybe that does what would. But at the end of the day, she chose to do something completely different, because it's what felt right for her. Those cards are literally, and my ideas around that are guidance. It's a very broad piece of guidance. This is what I see. This is what I'm sensing. You need to interpret that in a way that feels right for you. I can't say, yeah, do that. do this, because then it's my responsibility if something happens. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to take responsibility for your life. Tough enough being me. So take responsibility for yourself. Ask for support, ask for help. But don't ask for somebody to come up with solutions to your problems. You know, don't ask for somebody to say yes or no for you. You need to make that decision. Okay? You need to do what is right for you. Always, 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 always. Anyway, hope this has been supportive and helpful. I'm going to let my dog in now before he scratches, more scratches on the door. Anyway, sending lots of love, and I'll see you soon. Lots of love.